right, good Christmas Eve morning, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who will be joining me, I'm not too sure we're going to get too many folks in today because I know this is probably peak holiday travel time and holiday shenanigans with those of you out there celebrating with friends and loved ones far and wide. I just wanted to come and do an update since we were late yesterday. We didn't get to do a live stream yesterday, so we'll go ahead and knock one out today before my own familial plans kick off later this afternoon. I'm going to be talking about the possible significant weather event that's going to encompass much of the Great Plains spanning into the Great Lakes Midwest, the Deep South, and the Southeast, especially for those of us who are going to be looking at a pretty heavy rain threat for the night of Christmas Eve into Christmas Day. So that's pretty much what we have on the docket today. Didn't mean to rhyme right there. That was kind of funny. This is what we have going on right now. So we have a pretty meridional pattern across much of North America, spanning all the way down into Central America, where our subtropical jet is still alive and well. It is expected to remain that way for the next 2 to 3 months, likely helping to continue to pump moisture across the south, the Gulf of Mexico, maybe the upper periphery of our Caribbean islands, the Yucatan Peninsula, Cuba, the Cayman Islands as well, and parts of the Bahamas too. We don't want to forget about you guys out there. Our 2 storm systems, yes, I said it, 2 storm systems, not just the one. Everyone's been focused on this one over the desert southwest. We'll get into a bit of a closer look here in a moment, but there's a secondary system, an actual bona fide polar supported low that's moving over Montana and Wyoming currently, with a lot of cold air and snowfall already occurring just upstream of that, where that sits. And what's expected to take place is going to affect all the way down through the southern tier United States, spanning all the way up into the central Canadian provinces. It's going to be a very stretched out system because of these 2 frontal boundaries and 2 upper level systems combining. Let's go ahead and move on real quick. Don't really have very many people joining us. That's very interesting. All right, so this is what we have looking at the greater lower 48. You can see now clearly that there are 2 distinct systems down here. There's a low right over top the Arizona-New Mexico border, and then another weak perturbation low pressure system that's kind of crossing fully into Montana, headed into parts of Wyoming. There are 2 distinct fingers of the jet supporting both of these features as well. If you look right in through here, we have one boundary that's really helping to pump a lot of our cold air, more potent maritime polar air over the northern Rockies, the Pacific Northwest, the Great Basin, Intermountain West, and then over the Deep South we have our secondary system. This was actually a breakaway cold pocket that's kind of all by itself with a little bit of leftover jet energy associated with its circulation. And that's why we're going to have the 2 systems come together right over the Great Plains, the Central Plains to be exact, right in through here, and that's where we're going to get a very expansive warm sector that's going to surge all the way through the Midwest, the Great Lakes, into parts of Ontario. It's already established itself, too. It's already pumping up some pretty good warm air. I mean, you can call it relatively warm air over the southern plains, Texas, and that's why we're already starting to see some thunderstorm activity right here and right in through there. A couple little things there. Let me go ahead and clear my ink because it's getting a little congested here. But yeah, so if I had to draw the 2 areas, we have one cold boundary right in through here, and then we have our standalone system that was a breakaway bubble of cold air from our jet that was situated over the desert southwest and especially SoCal, helping to dump them with a couple inches of rain, provide them with some good flooding over the last 3 to 5 days, not 3 to 5 days, excuse me, last 2 to 3 days, pardon me, over here stretching out the time frame. We got another little weak perturbation moving through the lower Great Lakes into the northeast right in through here. Not too much associated with it. You can see a little bit of moisture, some dry air indicative of weak jet energy that's trying to feed into that vortex, but nothing or anything significant associated with that. And then down here, up until this system can really get its act going, we're going to see pretty much this entire region of the United States under the influence of this system, with a lot of our heavier snowfall occurring over the Dakotas, parts of Nebraska, moving into the upper Midwest towards the Great Lakes, and then a very, very good potential. We're going to have some coastal flooding and inland flooding over the Gulf Coast and into the southern plains, the southern Mississippi Valley. So that's good news for them, because I noticed a lot of folks were talking about possibly getting a little bit more rainfall to help the Mississippi River, especially so that way they don't continue to see a lot of the salt inundation and the salt pushes, or advection almost you could call it, coming through from the Gulf of Mexico. So, not a whole lot of crazy weather going on, but we do have a very active pattern. There are no lies detected when determining if this pattern is going to be a little chaotic, and it really is, especially since we have two different fingers of the jet supporting two separate frontal systems. I mean, you can honestly almost make a case that there's three different low vortices here. It looks like there's one right there, there's one right here, and then there's one up there. So we have multiple little vorticity couplets moving through the pattern right here, coming across the Pac Northwest, the central portions of the actually coming right across the Sierra Mountain Range over the Sacramento area, the upper terrain features of California, and then surging into the desert Southwest as well. And you'll see it very clearly when we get over to our vorticity chart here in a moment. How close are we? Welcome in, Devil Charger. Good to see you. Mr. Florida.Brian, Rex Block brother. We are no longer under that Rex Block. Everything is now officially moving. Super Charas, welcome in. Good to see you guys joining us. So as I'd mentioned, this is going to be windy.com. This is our live data as of right now. This is 11 a.m. according to Windy, and this is 850 millibars. And, it's a little weird that Storm Prediction Center doesn't have a greater chance of at least, a marginal risk for severe thunderstorms. They have the risk of thunderstorms out over the south, and they actually shrunk that area just a little bit. But looking at the establishment of our warm sector already coming up out of the south, if you guys look, our winds are completely funneling in from those equatorial regions, the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico, and we already have winds in excess of 40, 50 knots over Kansas, Oklahoma, moving into Nebraska as well. Actually, already starting to get into the southeast corner of South Dakota as well, probably helping to warm their air up just a little bit. We still have a pretty decent high pressure over us. We can kind of streamline it out right in through here. This is our high pressure over the mid-Atlantic states, somewhere centered out over here just between the coastline of us and Bermuda off the shoreline. And that's what's also helping to funnel a lot of that modified warmer air. And when I say warmer, guys, it's relative warmer air. It's not anything crazy. We're not talking like 40, 50 degree weather here and 90 degree weather here. And that's probably another reason why we don't have an elevated risk for severe weather. I'm not calling for anything substantial from this, but we'll definitely see some pretty enhanced activity. And with the dynamics we already have shaping up, I wouldn't be surprised if Storm Prediction Center later on to this evening or early tomorrow actually gave us a bit more of a marginal risk for severe weather. And that's all I'm looking for. I'm just kind of interested in the fact that they've kept it at just garden variety thunderstorms, more so a heavy rain threat. Do I think heavy rain is a definite issue? Yeah, absolutely. We're going to have lots of good rainfall right in through here, and we may have to explore the possibility of seeing some good accumulation for the state of Florida based on what our most recent models are thinking. Mr. Florida Man or Mr. Brian, tornado level, yeah, how close are we are saying is very low, very low. I'm not thinking we're going to see tornadoes out of this. I just do think we could see some embedded severe thunderstorms, possibly, possibly. I haven't taken a close look at what our dynamics and what our environmental parameters look like, particularly for the Dixie Alley Southern Plains area. But just looking at the broad scale dynamics, it's very interesting that we don't have any threat for severe at all. Because if you take this just a little further in time, we'll go right into the beginning of Christmas Eve. Look at how much stronger those 850 millibar winds get. And you can start to see some really good confluence right in through here with our multiple systems coming down. This acceleration in the winds, believe it or not, is going to be our cold air advection. And that's why, I'm a little interested to know why we don't have not only our thunderstorm area potentially expanded, but we don't have maybe even just a small little block of, marginal risk. I'm not looking for anything enhanced or significant. But, it looks like we are going to have a good environmental setup to get maybe an isolated bout of stronger thunderstorm activity. Nothing crazy. I'm not thinking 50, 60, 70 knot winds or a high potential for tornadoes or an outbreak at any means. But, just looking at this overlay by itself, very good funneling of cold air out of the north, really good funneling of warm air out of the south, relatively warm air, more modified tropical polar air. There's your convergence zone right in through here, and it's only going to continue to extend down further to the south. If I take the overlay a little bit further into actual Christmas Eve, we'll go to lunchtime on Christmas Eve. There you go. Look at that very aggressive system really beginning to set itself up. We have a low pressure center up over Minnesota, another area that's trying to establish itself over Kansas, Nebraska, Oklahoma, and then down over the south, we really get this good push of dry, cooler air across Texas into Louisiana. And right in through here is where I do think we could see a marginal risk. Yeah, they have a marginal risk for very small areas in Texas. But, looking at this, that's a really good contrast between the two. So I don't know. I don't know, guys. I'm still thinking we could see some severe weather. Nothing widespread, nothing large scale, nothing dramatic, but just looking at the way this is set up and how elongated of a warm sector and a moisture fetch we have going all the way through, crossing several international borders for that matter, I do think we could see at least a run at some isolated, stronger thunderstorms, some good lightning, maybe some elevated winds with these storms as they rain themselves out, the down rushes that come with the collapsing updrafts. But that's about it. If you look here, like we were already talking about, Storm Prediction Center does have a slight risk for some severe activity, or a level 2 risk down over West Texas right now, with a marginal risk expanding up into the Texas Panhandle, the southeast corner of New Mexico, eastern New Mexico, and then trying to get a little further into interior Texas. Into day 2, like I said, they kind of brought the risk down. They really brought it down. They had it encompassing a bit of a larger area yesterday in terms of our thunderstorms, and now they shrunk it, and I want to say that they should maybe put in just a level 1 risk somewhere right in through here. Just a level 1 risk of some pretty decent thunderstorm activity. And that's the only qualm I have. I don't think we're going to see any tornadoes, less than 2%. This makes a lot of sense. Tornado parameters, 2% down there in West Texas. I think a decent call out on their part. The big issue is going to be the rainfall. As you can see here, this is day 1, day 2 especially, and then into day 3, and I'm surprised they don't have Florida highlighted for at least a marginal at all, because when we get into the model data, you'll notice that we actually do still have something trying to get its act going in the Gulf of Mexico, not organized, but what it's going to do is allow that frontal band to move through us, dump some pretty good rain on it, and then that push of moisture is just going to kind of reinforce it and help to keep rainfall in the pattern for us as we get started with early next week. This is Monday into Tuesday, Tuesday into Wednesday, and then Wednesday into Thursday. That system has now transitioned up the eastern seaboard into the northeast quadrant of the U.S., and then we have another system potentially preparing to make landfall over NorCal and into Oregon. So, nothing, it's active, but not overly active, if that makes sense to you guys. Just some good stuff to talk about, nothing too wild. PXTT, welcome in. Can you use the KMA a little more in some of your videos as well, because it is a big time now? Yeah, I can do that. I'll definitely pull it up here in a moment. I think tomorrow they should issue a marginal for East Texas, and that's it. East Texas into Louisiana, I would think a marginal, like you were saying. Just a marginal risk for some severe weather. Very short-lived bouts of stronger thunderstorms could roll through there just based on the dynamics. And then this is going to be, we'll call this our 3 panel because my head is in the way of the bottom right, so we're not going to use all 4 panels at the risk of me clouding it up. But if you look, we have a couple different shortwave vortices at that 500 millibar level. It might be a little difficult for you guys to see because it's a smaller panel, but there's a good shortwave trough moving through Wyoming, Colorado, and then another area of vorticity that's moving through Texas. And they're going to help to kind of converge upon one another right there. Right there. And then with that being said, if you look at the MSLP, you have a pretty good snow band over the Dakotas into Nebraska, Minnesota, and then we also have this really good training effect of shower and rainfall activity that's going to surge through the Gulf of Mexico, into the Ohio, Mississippi Valley, into the plains, and so on and so forth. And then all the way to the right, if you look, we have a really good low-level jet that's established on both sides of it. We almost have a really good increase in winds as that cooler air comes funneling down towards the south, and then a really good channeling of warmer air on the right-hand side of the leading edge of it as well. So again, nothing expansive. I don't think there's going to be anything catastrophic that comes from this. I think we might just be lowballing it a smidge. Just give it a little nudge and, up the chances at least down for the Gulf Coast states would be a pretty accurate call, I think. But we'll see how everything starts shaking out as we get into into tonight and then into tomorrow. This is our 12Z GFS. The GFS is still thinking that we could get some areas of very heavy rainfall along the Gulf Coast, Gulf of Mexico for Texas, Louisiana, spreading into the panhandle of Florida, parts of Alabama and Georgia. And then if you notice, as that frontal band continues through, it kind of stalls out, keeps giving us some rainfall, and then we get a surge of more rainfall out of the Gulf. The GFS solution has it moving just a little bit further to the south. Looking more of a risk of rainfall, increased rainfall for the southern periphery of Florida into the Bahamas and Cuba, maybe seeing some spanning down into the Cayman Islands, parts of Belize and the Caribbean. The Yucatan will definitely see it, and then that's that. Then the New Year is going to be very quiet. maybe a weak system trying to establish itself towards the very tail end of the run. But I always take these with a grain of salt. These things change all the time. Once you get beyond 200 hours with the GFS, I feel like it just starts making stuff up. This area is probably going to adjust itself. We're going to probably see changes in that little unstable wave that suddenly sneaks in through the four corners, the front range of the Rockies. So yeah, Canadian model, where did it go? I lost it. Where'd the Canadian model go? Here we go. Canadian model is also thinking the same thing. Pretty decent shot at some significant thunderstorm and heavy rainfall activity for the Gulf Coast. Like I mentioned, particularly East Texas, Louisiana, maybe kind of getting into the coastline of Mississippi as well. And then as it transitions over to Florida, notice that we get that sudden acceleration in how fast the southern part of that front gets moving through. And then just as it clears out, we get another shot of something exiting the Gulf of Mexico into the western Atlantic. That's going to keep our rain chances elevated. This is as we go into Wednesday and Thursday of next week. And then again, just like all the other models are thinking, we clear out just in time for the new year. Canadian model thinks we might have a little bit of a low pressure system trying to form up again as well, but we'll see. I expect changes as always. So yeah, it's very possible. It's very possible. I haven't really been looking too far out into the future right now. I've been bouncing back and forth between YouTube and looking at my TikTok and whatnot. So we'll see exactly what shakes out as we get into the beginning of January. And then as we get into January as well, we'll get a little bit more of the climatology information, and we can start kind of a very, very slow but steady countdown to the next hurricane season. At least that's how I see it. I already made a bit of a segment on not only my TikTok, but also here on YouTube about next hurricane season. I'm going to leave it at that. And then when we get to January, we'll do another updated segment looking at our new climatology data, since a lot of our climo models update on a month-to-month basis. And then we'll also get, by, I want to say January, between 15th and 17th, we'll get a new ENSO forecast, and we'll be able to take a look at that and kind of slowly begin to draw conclusions as we get closer to springtime. Ryan, welcome in. Nomad Cat 4, good to see you. Welcome. We're doing a quick abbreviated live stream, just kind of covering our bases for what to expect over the next 48 hours, especially since this is probably one of the more busier times of the year for holiday travel. So as you can see, we have a very strong subtropical jet, an extremely strong subtropical jet at that, which is why I do think the models are onto something, that we'll get a little bit of some kind of weak cyclogenesis down there over the Gulf of Mexico just in time for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of next week, giving us another round of possible rainfall down here in Florida. And then after that, we get a little bit of a lull. Notice that the jet kind of weakens. We get a little bit of shared energy over the southeast and mid-Atlantic. That's probably the reason why our models are thinking maybe we could see a system sneak its way in, a very weak one. But we'll have to just keep an eye out, see exactly what kind of shakes out. Because then if you look off the coastline, we have another really, really strong jet system that's moving in, or a jet finger, I should say, jet max. But, looking at the long-range data, the models really don't have the pattern amplifying too much. Typically, with this strong of winds, I'll change the color so you can see. Typically, with this introduction of really good jet energy, you would imagine that this trough is going to deepen and our ridge over the west or the eastern half of the country is going to start to expand. But that's not the way it looks right now. And the more zonal we stay, the less of a weather pattern we're going to have, or the less active of a weather pattern we're going to have. So we'll see exactly what decides to take shape. And then last but not least, we're going to take a look at our temperature advection anomaly chart. You look, and as we go over the next several days, we're going to see a bit of a warming trend before that system plunges through the southeast. It's going to be nice and cool, hopefully, as the new year comes in, but then it's rapidly going to transition back to a warmer pattern as our next system tries to take a plunge out of Canada. And then last but not, well, actually I shouldn't say last but not least, but then finally we'll conclude looking at our Weather Prediction Center charts. These are their mock charts for the rest of the week and into the next, These are the mock charts for the rest of the weekend into next week. Wow, I don't know why I almost had an aneurysm right there. So you can see, even though we're not really looking at much in the way of really active severe weather, this is a very active enhanced pattern is what I'll call it, because You could argue that we are expecting possible severe weather through Nebraska, parts of North or South Dakota, the Colorado Front Range, maybe even into Kansas, where we have that rain-snow line along these two different warm sectors that are pushing up. You could almost argue there's a third warm sector that's washing out as that really potent warm conveyor sets up and continues to surge to the north. But I do think there is a chance that they can get some freezing rain and sleet in there. And then when I was in Air Force weather, we would definitely consider that severe weather criteria. So it doesn't necessarily always have to be hail, strong winds, or tornadoes. This would technically be severe winter weather that's occurring over the upper Midwest, or I should say the lower Midwest, and then the northern plains, the front range of the Rockies, with a pretty decent shot at some heavy snow, I would imagine, for Montana, Wyoming, and Colorado. So, yeah, and then it continues to transition through into a very, very long, elongated, occluded system. And then we wipe the pattern clean for a while, just in time for the following weekend, New Year's Eve weekend. And that's that. Any questions? No, I'm just kidding. We're honestly probably going to get ready to call it there. I have a lot of plans today. I'm going to try to maybe go get a haircut before all of us step out and go to SeaWorld later this afternoon. Take advantage of the somewhat cool but conservative weather before all this rolls in for Christmas Eve. And then we also have family flying in tomorrow that we'll need to scoop from OIA first thing tomorrow between 10 and 12. So, how much rain? We could see some pretty decent inundation down here. I'll pull up what I had on my TikTok earlier. Let's go down to, we'll go to the southeast, and we'll do total accumulation. And as we take this through time, right here, there you go, you can start to see that we are expecting some decent rainfall across the board. Some areas are averaging between 4 to 5 inches. It looks like there's a small highlighted area that could get as much as almost 6 inches of rain between Alabama, Florida Panhandle. And then down here, the average consensus is we're going to see between 1 inch to maybe 2.5 inches. But depending on where that next system in the Gulf of Mexico gets stretched out and rushes through the pattern. So, yeah. That's about it. And then I'll go ahead and zoom out, kind of cover what I did on TikTok as well. If you guys look up over, I'll go to, let's go total snowfall. If you look up over not only the front range of the Rockies, you can see that we got about 3 to 4 inches of snow over Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, maybe even to parts of the northern higher terrain features of New Mexico. But then through the Dakotas, Minnesota, and Nebraska especially, we're looking at maybe over a foot of snow as that system continues to transition through and pick up even more cold air, pull in some moisture from that remnant low we talked about on the water vapor out this way and wrap it around. That's where you'll hear the terminology wrap around snowfall, wrap around moisture, because it gets pulled into a deepening low and begins to, once it crosses that rain-snow line, the freezing line, that's when you get that transition to very heavy snow precip. But doesn't Georgia have Six Flags? If I'm not mistaken, isn't Georgia in Six Flags? Isn't Six Flags in Georgia? Yes, Georgia's in the theme park of Six Flags. I worded that wrong. I haven't had enough caffeine just yet this morning. I could have sworn you guys have Six Flags up there. I've been meaning to go to Six Flags. The only time I went was many years ago, I think back in 2015, to the Six Flags in Los Angeles. No, nothing? Yeah, I don't know what South Carolina has either. I'm not going to lie. But there you have it, folks. That's about it. We're 23 minutes in, and we're probably going to get ready to wrap the live stream. I didn't really think we would have very much of a turnout at all today. Maybe some folks will trickle in as we get throughout the day when this video posts up. I'll get some more comments and whatnot, but that's it. That's what we have shaken out over the next several days. We got this big elongated system that's going to just rush through the United States and parts of southern Canada and extend its reach down into the Caribbean and through the Gulf of Mexico as well, where they can see some residual effects from it. But that's all she wrote, ladies and gentlemen. We will talk to you again very soon. I wanted to jump on here and wish you guys the merriest of Christmases, and I'll probably throw a short up on the YouTube channel sometime tomorrow before all the Christmas shenanigans pop off. And then we'll get ready to celebrate the new year. We'll probably do either a live stream or I'll post something else up for the New Year's as well, welcoming that in with all you guys, because I think that 2024 is going to be a big year. Not necessarily just for the hurricane season, but Lord willing, we can get this channel back in business and I can start to appropriately plan more content, because I definitely have. I'll be honest, I've been slacking big time. I've been very heavily slacking since the semester of school ended. I've been not necessarily kicking back, but I've been enjoying the little bit more free time to decompress and not have to worry about jam-packing everything in all at once, while also tending to my re-enlistment with the military. That's been taking up a lot of time. You see any special data with that above-average rainfall out on South Florida end of the month? Nothing really special, no. What's really going to happen is we're going to have that big front coming through, and then it's not going to be as substantial of a low pressure as we saw this previous weekend or the one back in October, but we're going to have a very stretched out, very heavily sheared band of low pressure that's going to come through and reinforce the rainfall totals. You should check out Force 13's animation on the 2023 Atlantic hurricane season. Yeah, I can definitely check that out afterward when I get a little bit more free time. But, yeah, folks, that's all she wrote. We're going to go ahead and jump off the live stream. Just wanted to put something up that folks can refer back to, just so everyone knows that, or at least a few of you know, that the Weather Center is still tracking the weather pattern, and we're still keeping a close eye out on things. Posting a lot more updates on my TikTok and sometimes my Instagram nowadays, trying to buff those numbers up as we go through this slow YouTube season for everybody. Everyone's YouTube channel, I've noticed, even with folks who are 100 some odd, 200,000 followers deep, they're barely getting like 10% of their viewers to watch nowadays. So, I mean, it goes without saying, we don't really have anything crazy to talk about. We haven't had any named winter storms yet. Obviously, tropics are dead and gone. We've buried that coffin. 2023 is almost over, the calendar year now. So, we'll see what next year brings. But we'll definitely continue to discuss things and kind of cover what we can on this weather channel. And if there is an opportunity to go storm chasing again, you best believe we're going to do it. And, yeah. Alrighty, guys, if you have any comments, questions, concerns, suggestions, please leave them in the comments section of this video down below, or perhaps drop me a line on my Instagram, my TikTok, wherever you guys see fit, wherever you're comfortable with. My Twitter is now active, WX Center Nazario, all one word. Hope to see you guys following me on that platform as well, as I learn the ropes of how to manipulate that a little bit more in our favor. And I hope you have a good rest of your day, and we'll hopefully kick Christmas Eve off tomorrow on a very high note, and we'll talk again very soon. I can promise you guys that. But again, until next time, this is Weather Center Nazario, signing out.